Months, in some cases more than a year of campaigning will come down to this: the primary runoff races here in Texas. And there are a variety of big contests here that voters will get to decide, and the candidates' political futures are on the line. Early voting begins tomorrow and runs through Friday only. There will be no early voting next weekend. Election Day is Tuesday, May 26th. And the most talked about race in Texas is the Senate GOP primary runoff, the battle royale between four-term incumbent Senator John Cornyn and three-term Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Both Cornyn and Paxton have ramped up their campaigning ahead of early voting. Paxton spoke before the grassroots conservative group Restore the Republic in Little Elm on Friday morning. Cornyn held a campaign rally in Waco on Friday. They've got multiple other stops across the state, including more in North Texas. Senator Cornyn criticized Paxton's record, and Paxton questions Cornyn's record and said he has a big disadvantage when it comes to fundraising against the incumbent.
And so we have this opportunity to send a message to Washington. It's one of two messages. They've spent $100 million in the first round to beat me, and they limit what I can raise. They make it really difficult. Incumbents have unlimited fundraising. Otherwise, how do you raise $100 million? You can't do it on the limits that they say we have, $3,500. There's no way. So they try to make sure you never win. This will be historic. To beat somebody straight up with the disadvantage that the funding is. I've accomplished more for the state of Texas in any two-week period than he did in 40+ years. Can you name one good accomplishment? Can anybody name a good accomplishment? Do you know that I've asked that question in every meeting since April the 8th of last year? It's almost 14 months. No one has ever given me an answer to that. That's pathetic. Texas should do better.
He, frankly, has disqualified himself by his bad judgment and bad choices, and basically lying to Texas taxpayers, lying to his own staff who turned him into the FBI for interfering in a federal criminal investigation of one of his campaign donors, and then was sued by his senior team as whistleblowers for when he fired him for turning him into the FBI. And then, of course, what he's done to his own family, which is shameful. This is about our future, and this is about making sure that the people who actually do represent us are people that don't embarrass us, and that are actually interested in doing the work day in and day out.
This runoff has received national attention. Cornyn pulled off a surprise on March 3rd, defying the polls and coming out ahead of Paxton in an 8-person race. Heading into the runoff, an average of the independent polls listed by Real Clear Politics between March 17th and May 1st shows Paxton in the lead by more than 3 percentage points, 45.5% to 42.3% for Cornyn. Paxton's campaign released a poll giving him an 11 percentage point advantage. Cornyn's campaign released information from Deep Root Analytics saying if Paxton is the Republican nominee, quote, he generates a 5 to 8 point drag on Republican net margins across the state, potentially hurting others in the GOP down ballot in November. And when it comes to campaign ad spending during the runoff, Ad Impact Politics says of the $20 million total spent by the Republicans, more than $16 million has been spent by or for Cornyn, while nearly $4 million has been spent by or for Paxton. Both Cornyn and Paxton have continued blasting each other in the TV and radio ad wars, Cornyn questioning Paxton's record as Attorney General and his ethics. Paxton questioning Cornyn's accomplishments in the Senate. President Trump has said since March he would make an endorsement in this race, but that hasn't happened, and on Friday suggested that won't happen until after the runoff.
I don't want to say that. I mean, I'm looking at it very strong. I like them both. I mean, I'll tell you what I do think. I think the Democrats have a weird candidate. 6 genders, a real hit on Jesus.
While there are still more than 5 months until the November election, some recent statewide polls show Democratic Senate candidate James Tallarico is ahead of both Cornyn and Paxton in the general election this November. I recently asked Senator Ted Cruz, who beat Democrat Beto O'Rourke by just 2.6 percentage points back in 2018, about his level of concern about the midterm elections this time.
I'm concerned about the midterms, and I'm concerned about Texas. I don't believe at the end of the day Democrats are going to win statewide in Texas in 2026.
Why not?
But it's a real fight because I think the values of Texans are fundamentally conservative. I think the policies that we're following in Texas are working: low taxes, low regulation, securing the borders. I think James Tallarico, his policy positions are really extreme. They're out of step with common sense Texans.
We spoke with SMU political science professor Matthew Wilson, who sizes up the Senate GOP battle.
I think the biggest thing driving it is a battle for the soul of the Texas Republican Party. In a sense, it is a conflict between more traditional expressions of Texas conservative republicanism versus a very combative, insurgent approach to conservative politics. The differences on the issues are minimal, but the differences in terms of style and presentation are dramatic. And so I think which of those Texas Republicans prefer and which group of Texas Republicans actually bestirs themselves to show up and vote is going to determine the outcome of this race.
So when you look at the polls, the average of the independent polls from March 17th through May 1st, I went back and checked, shows Paxton leading by 3.25 percentage points. And I'm wondering, do you think that's right?
That would be my best guess right now, that Paxton is a small favorite. But modeling turnout and predicting turnout in a primary runoff is really difficult. If you recall, Paxton led by a few points in the polling leading up to the first round.
Right.
And Cornyn actually just eked it out in terms of a first place finish back in March. I think that gives Cornyn some hope that he may be slightly under polling and could repeat what happened in March. I think the difficulty is that Paxton's supporters are more likely to be the ideological diehards, the party activists, and those people are the ones who are most likely to turn out in the primary runoff. So the real challenge for Cornyn is going to be mobilizing more moderate traditional Republicans to actually show up on May 26th and get him over the top.
Cornyn is outspending Paxton on the airwaves, just as we saw before. And we're looking at the ads. When you look at what Cornyn is doing, it's all, it's a lot of personal about his, Paxton's personal problems, his ethical issues, marital issues, etc. And Paxton's hitting him on, what has Cornyn done for you? And I'm wondering, how do you think that's going to translate to getting their supporters to the polls?
Well, we know that negative politics sells. People say they don't like it, but the reality is that study after study shows that attacking your opponent bears more political dividends than talking up your own campaign. And so therefore we see both candidates doing that. I mean, the crux of the Cornyn attack on Paxton is that he is corrupt and he is morally suspect. And we know that argument is out there. We know about Paxton's marital troubles. We know about his ethical troubles. And so that's going to be a central part of the campaign. Paxton's argument about Cornyn is that he's been around forever. He's running an ad featuring cultural icons from 1984, which was the year that John Cornyn first went into politics, to drive the point home that Cornyn is a lifelong fixture of the political scene. And if you want some sort of change, he's not the way to go.
This is going to be the last stand between two Texas titans. Is that fair to say?
Sure. I mean, these are people who have years and years of service in statewide elected politics. They've both won multiple statewide elections. It is certainly going to be Cornyn's last rodeo. That is, if he's elected to a 6-year term, it's almost impossible to imagine him running again 6 years from now. If Paxton wins, I mean, he's likely to be around still for a while. So he would likely remain on the political scene. But if Paxton loses, then I think he's almost certainly done. And that would be his last hurrah as well. Win or lose, this is Cornyn's last electoral cycle.
We also saw in the last week or so, last couple weeks, general election polls that show Democrat James Tallarico ahead of Cornyn and Paxton. The UT Texas Politics Project poll showed Tallarico ahead of Cornyn by 7 percentage points, ahead of Paxton by 8 percentage points. Do you buy that?
That sounds like a bit much to me. That is a bit of an outlier compared to other polling that we've seen. But even from other outlets, we've seen the race essentially a dead heat, or if not Tallarico up 1, 2, 3 points. So I think that is probably where the race stands right now. I think that it is going to be a 50-50 contest. I think Republicans feel like in the end, John Cornyn has a better chance to prevail against Tallarico than Paxton does. That's certainly what Republicans in Washington believe. They think that Paxton gives them more difficulty in terms of holding this seat. They think that Cornyn would be a safer bet for re-election.
Here are some of the other big races we are following in the primary runoff. In the Republican primary runoff for Texas Attorney General, State Senator Mays Middleton of Galveston, who came in first on March 3rd, faces Central Texas Congressman Chip Roy. Both portray themselves as the true conservative fighters in the race. In the Democratic primary runoff for Attorney General, former Galveston Mayor Joe Jaworski faces State Senator Nathan Johnson of Dallas, who nearly won outright back in March. Democratic State Representative Vicki Goodwin of Austin, who came close to winning in March, faces Union leader Marcos Velez in the primary runoff for Lieutenant Governor. And another hotly contested race is the Democratic primary runoff for the 33rd Congressional District in Dallas County between Congresswoman Julie Johnson and former Congressman Colin Allred. They've sharply criticized each other's records. We're also watching another statewide race, the Republican runoff for Railroad Commissioner between former Tarrant County GOP Chairman Beau French, who's challenging the incumbent Jim Wright. And we mentioned earlier the Democrats' nominee for U.S. Senate, James Tallarico. He hosted a high-profile guest in Austin last week, former President Barack Obama. Democratic gubernatorial candidate Gina Hinojosa joined them at a campaign stop at an Austin restaurant. The former president did not make a speech, but he did go from table to table to speak with diners. And on his way out, he told supporters to go vote.